You want to find your tribe of raving fans. I'm going to help you do it. This is the Digging Deep podcast with 360 Media, where we help you do better business. Hey everybody, this is Justin Lamb, and you're watching episode 9 of Digging Deep, where we help business owners build better businesses. Today, I have a good friend and colleague of ours in the industry. He is a great filmmaker, and he helps businesses find the right audience through videos, putting them online in front of people when they want it. Please welcome to the show, Justin Booth. Justin, how are you today?
I'm well, sir. Thank you. I've seen you a lot today already. It's good to see you some more.
I know, right? Yeah. So for those people who didn't know, we are both part of BNI Group, and we meet every Wednesday morning. And this morning is one of those days. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll probably be a few weeks from now. But you're in a long line of queue. Um, but I did want to thank you. And uh, I think right now being socially distanced is such a big shift in our marketplace. And I think one of the things that has forced both you and I into is reevaluating how are we going to serve uh, audiences who need to still market in such a not only an emotionally sensitive but also a financially sensitive market.
I get like waves of anxiety about it. Like sometimes it doesn't bother me so much. I'm optimistic about it. I'm like, you know what? If I just sit back and I take a look and I write, I write things down in front of me and I'm like, look, I can get through this. But when you start thinking about, okay, well, what if it gets worse? That gets a little frightening. And then you turn on the news and you're like, oh shit, it's getting worse.
It's getting pretty bad.
And then you think about how what they're reporting is delayed by at least, well, it's delayed and not accurate.
Yeah, and
We're,
even the reporting is not accurate. I mean, you could probably add another zero to most of those numbers, and that'll be closer to the real reality of it.
yeah, because you have some nations in the world that, like, just aren't keeping up with testing. Like, I'm sorry, I just got back from Mexico before this all broke, and that country is not rolling out mass testing in the small communities across their coast and countryside. Like,
Yeah, Mel, like my wife, is on a few different podcasts with some pretty high profile research and scientists, and she's like, it's pretty grim. They estimate 1% of the population will will die from it.
yeah, and then just the speed at which it hit all of our collective realities, let alone the businesses, but how it just brought everything to a stop. And that's why I think the government's just going to start cutting checks and verifying later, because they can't afford to waste time verifying everyone, because the people that are really, really in need it now, and the people that are just going to scam the system, well, hopefully there's enough follow-up afterwards to catch them and punish them. But the people that need it now, like April
Yeah,
1st, they need to pay the rent today.
yeah, it's crazy. But on the other half of that is like how much money is going to be like
Transferred.
able transferred, and how much, and how can that be sustainable? Like the deficit is already huge. It's going to be gargantuan after, and then of course the GDP is down. You're going to have huge implications across the board with that, and industry is going to take at least a year to recover, and then trickle down supplementary services like us, where we're part luxury, part necessity.
Yeah.
We're one of the last ones like to recover. There's a good majority of the population that'll be hurting for money, and they're scrambling just to get their heads above water, and preparing for what they have to pay back in terms of the loans and anything that they've had supplemented in the next little while. So
Yep.
it's scary. It's also scary to realize how few people have runways financially to sustain themselves.
Yeah, I know. And I have to admit, mine isn't as strong as I wish it was right now. I've been able to, like I said, take a wide view and go like, okay, like we can do it. It's going to affect the other decisions that I wanted to make, you
Of
know.
course, I mean that's everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
like myself included. It's the hard reality. It's just like, well, what can I keep active, and who can I keep employed, and for how long before I can't figure out a way to sustain the revenue stream. And then of course all the luxury stuff that we would normally buy are out the window. I mean, right now we're lucky in that we still have enough financial runway to buy good food when good food is available in the stores. Like quality food. Like, I mean, prior to this, we lived a life where dual income, and healthy, was able to sustain, like, at least farm fresh eggs and stuff like that, and a lot less pasta and all that stuff. But the reality is what's going to happen in 6 to 8 months if this continues on, and you know people eventually will run the system dry. It's just, like, I can't imagine finding toilet paper would be this difficult. Like,
When I
it's like,
first went and bought a roll, a pack, like a whatever, a 12 pack or whatever, and it was right at the beginning when all that weird stuff was going on. I felt so embarrassed buying. I felt like I was buying like feminine products. But I just needed toilet paper. I wasn't hoarding. I was like, it's time to buy toilet paper. But
yeah,
yeah, I can't believe that became a thing either. And
it's crazy.
yeah, and yeah, some of that behavior was despicable. But I hear you saying, yeah, 6, 8 months down the road, those shelves, that supply chain could really, really get tested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
There's lots
And
of fresh vegetables and fruit on the shelves, which is a comment on how healthily the majority of people are eating, and it might not be that healthy because there's plenty of fresh veg.
oh yeah, yeah, I went to No Frills on Broadway there, and like, I was like, oh, well, clearly people aren't really starving for stuff, because like the organic section is still full. So,
Ah, well,
if we just pick of the litter, like, that's
best
the easy part.
avocados you've ever had.
Exactly. So, I mean, for now, we're not worried about it too much. Like the business, I mean, I have 3.5, 4-ish months at the capacity we're at now. If I scale back, I probably could last to 6.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping not to scale back. I'm hoping to scale up and adapt at this time. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, what are you thinking in terms of scaling up? How do you approach that? That's what I think all of us are struggling. How do you approach marketing your business right now?
Well, I think it's like everything else. I mean, the conversations are organic, um, and for me, it's about trying to give value where I can, and then find places where there's a crossroads between available funds and being able to monetize on certain cornerstone pieces of our business. Like, there are lots of things we can do, and it's just finding the right people who have budgets, because there are people who do have budgets, but they're just sitting on it because the world has stopped. But that doesn't mean that they didn't have healthy enough budgets. And I know a lot of people aren't in that boat, and that's okay. Um, you know, but at the same token, if we don't advertise and we don't push our own services at that point, you're going to sink. And so you just have to come at it in a place that's genuine and not sleazy. And you just have to be honest about your offerings, and whether that you're going to be able to help that person satisfy a need at this point. And people have a bunch of fires going on in all their buckets, and if you have a service that is able to fill and put out or extinguish the fire out of that bucket, then it's okay. Like, you're clearly helping a person solve something. And if it means that there's a financial remittance at the end of it, I mean, there's got to be something there. I mean, unless you're going to do it on trade or whatever. And that's another currency that people I think forget, is that there's trade involved with a lot of things, and there's some things that can happen on trade. That can ease the mind of some individuals. I mean, of course, banks don't trade dollars for
No,
stuff.
but you can trade services and goods with people you're doing business with, and maybe it's something that you essentially need, or maybe it is one of those luxury items that you need right now. Like, your family could really use a new couch right now because you're spending a lot of time on it. And yeah, if you're doing business with a furniture store or something like that, maybe like stuff like that is
Yeah, and
definitely relevant currency right now.
yeah, and I mean, the world used to work that way. I mean, the reason why money is such a, a commoditized thing, or such a high value thing, is because people actually put themselves in debt.
Yeah.
And when you're in debt, that's the problem, is that you have to value money. Whereas if you had a very low debt load and a lot of things that don't rely a ton on money, you can actually get by quite well with barter and trade, so long as somebody was up for it. But the problem is when you have to pay the piper somewhere, the ability for you to want to trade is different.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You're right. When you're in debt, you value money much more.
Yeah, yeah. And
Trade.
if you didn't have debt, and like somebody said, "Hey, I can't pay you financially, but I have like I'm a farmer and I've got all these groceries that I can supply you with groceries for 2-3 months," you'd be like, "Sure."
Sure.
But when you have like a $10,000 line of credit out and you have to make monthly payments on that sucker, unfortunately, the that doesn't necessarily help at that point. I mean, you'd be okay with box cereal, as long as the hole was filled, right? And that's the difference. Is
Yeah.
10,000 isn't really huge, but there are other businesses that 20, 30, 40, $100,000, and they're not sponsoring your kids hockey tournament or soccer tournament, because like that $1,000 has got to go into their monthly payment, right?
And there's a lot of businesses right now that are having to really consider taking on that. Like, there's 40 grand the government is, and my accountant is like, you better apply for it.
Yeah,
I don't know if I need it. I mean, I think I can get through. And she's like, no, apply for it.
yeah, you should.
Like if you can get that money in your hands
It's
and make
safety.
money with it, you can always just turn it around and send them a check back if you don't spend it.
Yep, that's exactly it. It's better
But
to
if you
have it.
justify the need because of your business and the way it's you you're crazy not to get in line for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, I mean,
And how are businesses going to deal with that on the flip side when it does come time to pay the piper? And now a business that operated with little or no debt is like, it's going to take me 20 years or longer to pay back $40,000 to the GOV, and that's a real tough decision for some really small businesses like solopreneurs like me and others who have a couple employees, or that's a really tough burden to think about taking on. I'm going to do it, and if I spend any of the money, it'll be done very wisely. But it's yeah, for others where you just have to, you've got rent for a business location and employees and suppliers, depending on your business, that money's not going to last that long.
no, and I mean, this is a good topic to kind of dive in on. I think from a business perspective, I think a lot of people really over leverage themselves, and this actually alludes to a podcast that I recently recorded with Ryan about dashboards and about people in their businesses, and they're not financially ready or really financially viable. Um, you know, I know in at least the photographer videographer space, it's buy the nice pretty gear up front and pay for it when
As you
when
go.
gigs come in. And now where are the gigs? And I know personally of a few people who've recently bought gear, over leveraged themselves, they're stuck.
They've
And
got
that's
lease payments or no cash,
yeah, and that's a really tough place to be. And
because
so yeah,
you can sell it back or whatever, but then your business is gone.
but that's the thing is, are they are able to sell it back, and how many people are going to be able to buy it if a lot of us are in the same boat? So they're not really able to do that, and that's really tough because you know they're going to come out of the end of this with zero to no money. And you know I liken it to when we first started out as photographers and videographers, like you're groundbreaking, um, and you're literally going to have to start all over again, and that's a scary thought if you think about it. I mean, even the bigger players are hurting, and that means they're laying off people. That means that all their equipment leases, like, they're either liable for it, or there's going to be a bunch of insolvencies that are going to come up through the pipeline.
Yeah.
um, so what does that landscape look like for photographers and videographers coming out of it?
It'll thin out the herd a bit, my friend, which is okay because you and I have dealt with, and all businesses do, but we in our industry, the barrier to entry has steadily gone down. And so we have steadily seen an increase of ankle biters coming up from below, doing it for next to nothing. This will thin out some of the herd, which is unfortunate. Like, you don't wish that upon anyone. I come, my mindset's all about um, growth. And I think if you have that mindset, you can see an abundance of opportunities. Um, and there's enough for everyone, I think. And you and I've talked about it before. I think there's enough business for everyone, but those that are just getting into it, who haven't quite got their systems sorted out and they know how to work the gear, but they haven't quite figured out how to work the business. It's going to be next to impossible.
Yeah, and I think that for people who are in that boat where they're when they come back, they're going to be offering their services for cheap, trying to just recover financially. There's a real danger involved in that, and I think that's it's unspoken. And I know a lot of photographers in different circles, poo poo on the $300 a gig kind of person. And the real truth about it is a lot of us started out that way. I mean, it was a hobby, it wasn't a business. And what you did was you built yourself a job at one point.
Yeah.
And perhaps our dive today about that is really, when you're putting yourself at that level, there's a difference between having a business and being self-employed. And that's a really big distinction. And I think um, from not only the artist's end of it, so the actual photographer, but from the consumer end as well, it's a really big difference and a very big delineation. When they're talking about a freelancer, they're talking about a person who's self-employed. And of course, the rates are lower, but then there are caveats to that too. Um, they might be lower for a variety of reasons. Overhead could be lower, right? And also that their um, their own perceived value is actually undermined by themselves.
Yeah, it's doing them a disservice as well as the industry.
Yeah, and so I want to know what your take on that is that I think that when a person is a freelancer and they're their own secret sauce and they don't really wish to build a business, but they want to remain a freelancer, that they should actually be charging a premium rather than taking it on the lower road, because it is a lot of their own individual IP, like their own intellectual property that's into it, and they're their own secret sauce. I don't go to a dentist like, Dr. So and so to see their associate. I go to Smile Dental to see their associate. But if I go to a specific dentist, I expect to see my dentist, versus a conglomerate chain where I'm seeing an associate of some sort. And there's a distinction between that, because I would imagine that the level of care for that particular individual that I decide to choose to see, um, has their own special abilities, something that's uniquely their own. Um, the way that they handle themselves, their visual identity, their process or whatever, and that's them. And maybe it's not scalable as a business, and that they should actually be boutique pricing instead of low ball entry level, like low hanging fruit.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's all rooted in mindset. Either your mindset's just not healthy to begin with, or you're young and your mindset hasn't caught up to your ability. Um, yeah, I mean, I went that direction a long time ago. Like I operate as a solopreneur with contractors around me that I pull in for different jobs. But yeah, I mean, my prices may seem high for a 4 hour task, but it took me 20 years to learn how to do it in 4 hours. And you can hire someone else that's going to take them 10 and cost maybe even cheaper. But I've got the skills and ability. We've got the skills and ability because of our experience to do it more efficiently. Our systems are such that quality controls there. So yeah, no, I'm with you. That's not always the case with the skills match the price for younger people, but there are a lot of really talented people out there doing great work that are stuck in entry level pricing, and that's their own decision. I can't remember who it was or what the quote was, but somewhere along the line, my mindset switched about that, and it was pretty instantaneous. Where it was like, yeah, you know what? I can charge $120 an hour. I'm worth it. I do really good work.
Yep.
I provide good customer service, and a lot of my colleagues don't. They're operators. They're technicians.
Yep. And it's a really big thing about
And
that. And
I
and I
can
believe I believe that's true.
value
I
it.
think, yeah, I mean, I think that you should charge a premium for the services that you provide if you're providing value. And the real truth about it, and I know there's a lot of pushback in some capacity. My theory is the market dictates how much you're worth. You can
Mhm.
influence that, so you can put out a number. You could say that you're worth $1,000 an hour, and if somebody buys you at $1,000 an hour, you are halfway to that equation, right? That means that somebody saw enough value to buy it up front. The other half of that value is if that person returns or shares you with that person. Then you know if you have a viable market. Because you could say you're worth 1,000, a person tries it and they didn't think you were worth $1,000, then you're not worth $1,000. The market's telling you so, right? Um, but that doesn't mean that if you charge 120 and you're really busy, that you couldn't go to 200 to 250 until you start to see the fall off and go, people aren't accepting me for that price point. So then you're not worth what you really think you're worth. You're worth what the market feels that you're worth because you're
Yeah.
delivering a set amount of value that is perceived, for the money that they're exchanging. Whether you're a luxury brand good or you know, your or toilet paper, right? Like if you're one ply toilet paper, people aren't going to pay the premium for it because your finger goes through the toilet paper when you go wipe your ass. But they're willing to pay a little bit more for three ply,
Oh yeah.
and it might be more than three times the price per sheet, but you know, they're able to provide value because their fingers don't stink and they're not messy after, right?
Well, what an apropos analogy, my friend. What a It's funny because we're talking about this, and like I think we both remember struggling with that like early on. Like, God, I want to charge more, and wondering if you're worth it. And then like I'm simultaneously going through that all over again as my business pivots to offer new services that are forcing me to learn new skills and work with new people. And again, I'm struggling with that sort of, well, I'm just starting out sometimes and I should price accordingly. And, I'm fighting against that with myself again to view it a little more objectively and less emotionally.
and
You know,
and there's nothing
like,
wrong with, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with charging a lot lower to start. I mean, you're in a sense that you're paying to educate yourself, and as
yes,
you mature and you acquire more clients, you're
yes,
going to see that ability to raise your pricing. And at that point, I think you should feel comfortable through it. And I understand the mindset that goes on with that. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, like I feel like I'm charging so little because like I'm still learning it. But that's part of the process. Is like, you've learned some of it. There's obviously more to go, and of course the time it takes you is far different than somebody who's, a veteran or a seasoned person in that environment. So that's okay, because if it costed you the same, like double the time, and you charge half the money compared to somebody else who takes half the time and doubles your net zero, right? You got to the same point. So the value proposition is exactly the same. It's just, you've given up one for the other. And, I think that's okay. As long as there's transparency involved, and as you improve and you speed up, I think that the pricing should go.
Yeah.
And you and I have been in business long enough to kind of see how that's evolved, in the capacity as being, your case videography, in my case both photo and video. It's, when we did video, I started off quite low because we were still learning the ropes to it. Photography was the mainstay, and we grew with it. And as we grew with it, the demand grew with it, and you get to a point where you go, and you pushed and pushed and pushed until you got to a point where you go, okay, if I push a little bit higher, I have a significant fall off. And is that fall off too high for me to sustain where I want to be and the quality of work that I'm willing to put out, right? And that's something that, we have to toy with. I mean,
Yeah.
for photography, I actually started right out the gates. I did my first 2 weddings for free, just to get my feet wet into it, because I had nothing to show for it. I mean, it was literally zero. And I knew that starting and doing it, pro bono, at the time, was going to be the barrier to entry. And then after doing that, I personally did everything mathematically. So I calculated the prices of overhead and whatever. And if you extrapolate backwards, through 360's history, if you took my dollar cost average now, to what it was, back in 2001, late 2001 when I started, I've grown with inflation primarily, with only 1 or 2 incremental jumps because of the breadth of service or the level of service that we've gotten. So, if you took the unit pricing itself, I haven't grown much more than necessarily inflation, but I might have added additional services and width to the business. So, I mean, in that case, I think, being able to survive 20 years, we've done that, modeled from a financial projection, versus like most people who kind of come into it and just take a ballpark number and roll with it.
Yeah. I don't think I've dug into my numbers as deeply as you have over the years, but it's definitely, yeah, I look at the sophistication of how I operate my business and offer my services now, and compared to, yeah, the fly by the seat of your pants days.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And so you and I have been through over 2 decades now, or get into 2 decades. I don't know. I'm lucky. I haven't shown too much wear. I
Yeah,
have the Asian. I have the
you got
Asian
the
gene in
thing.
me. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
the Asian thing going on. But this is relevant. You and I have weathered through a vast amount of change in our industry, um,
Yeah.
both from the type of media that we started off with, the resolutions,
Yeah.
the type of camera and technology and computers that go along with it. We've also both seen a numerous amount of up and down market trends.
Yeah.
So, in your journey, what have
Yeah.
you found as the up and downs, and how did you adapt through all the different changes? Let's start from maybe like a technology standpoint. From the day you
Yeah.
started till now, what
Yeah.
did you have to endure, and what did you change in your business?
We had to endure, um, oh gosh, I had to endure 2 partners that loved to buy gear. And I was the partner who was like, let's just get what we need. So I was a little more practical, but I always, okay, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. But I think what we did right when it came to technology was we always future proofed ourselves. And I don't have partners anymore, so I'm speaking in the past tense. But I still do that with purchases I make. I'm like, am I still gonna be able to use this 5 years down the road? If not, I'm probably not gonna buy it, or I'll wait and see if it's just an emotional thing. So I've always future-proofed myself by like digging into the technology and the specs and looking at other trends in the market to see, okay, is this resolution, is this technology, is this going to hold up in the long run, or is there a change coming? I had to endure like a little bit of risk, you know, some lease payments, some financial risks to acquire those tools that did future-proof me, because entry-level tech and prosumer technology wasn't gonna cut it. And so, yeah, we took a bit of a risk financially and had to endure, you know, monthly lease payments for years to make sure we could still have the tools. Yeah. As far as like market trends, we've seen everything change, man. Like when we first started out, we were shooting in standard definition. And what were we delivering? We were delivering videos on DVD.
Still doing beta or tapes,
Or cam.
VHS.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
delivering cam for broadcast, like getting stuff put onto tape. But to my like digital clients, because that's where I entered, was when digital started. So the remnants of the tape era were still hanging around for some businesses who had that huge infrastructure invested in it. But my digital clients, it was like, yeah, DVDs to play on a standard definition television in a store or at a trade show. So that lasted quite a while. And then, yeah, man, I've still got some too,
So many just sitting there.
just sitting there. But then when the social media revolution happened, I didn't see it immediately, how that was going to change advertising forever and marketing forever. That's what we see happening now is like, you know, when's the last time you did a job for broadcast? Like, when's the last time you did a job for anything other than the web?
Yep, it's true.
You know, and photography is different because people still want hard copies of certain things, but in video, it's like, so that's what's happening now, and what where it's going, I don't know. I think e-commerce is going to explode, and the
Yeah.
use of video and really strategically created marketing around that is going to be huge, because we see the retail environment collapsing on itself. Been to a mall lately? When you go, they're bloody. They were like quarantine. Like they were you want to self distance, go to a mall. There's nobody there.
Hmm. And that's the thing is even though e-commerce is exploding, how do you think that fares given the technology available now, and how do you feel about our industry as it
Mhm.
evolves?
Well, I think what you're getting at is like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like people have the power to create in their hands. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
And so where does that position us as professional content creators if the business owner can create their own? So here's what I see happening on that. I think for a long time, when YouTube was, I almost said at its height, but it's not even close yet, I don't think. But when YouTube was first starting to get like, holy, this thing is huge, the what we accepted as for quality, for production value, started to kind of dip, I think. As more and more people put out kind of mediocre looking content, but the guts of what they were actually talking about was valuable. As that content started to become more and more, people started excusing low quality. And now I think what's happening is that's starting to change. And I think the quality of production is starting to match the quality of the content or the message in the content. And so what I think is going to happen is that's going to put people like you and I, who are filmmakers and photographers first, when when we combine those skills with the power of marketing that's happening online right now, I think that puts us in a really good position. So
That's an interesting point.
I think you'll see for a lot of advertisers and marketers the move back to quality, to again distinguish themselves and their brand as a premium, as better than the other guys, as better than that guy that's making his own videos. I don't know. That's my gut on where it's going to go, and I'm starting to see. Yeah, I'm starting to see it. Guys like Casey Neistat, and with Gary Vee, right? Those guys, I think those two guys in particular are sort of signaling that to me, anyways, with the amount of the size of their audience, and then you look at the value, their production values. It's like it's pretty good.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think the middle market will become commoditized. I think I think the general public, um, as you alluded to, has a lower set standard for what's acceptable, and they're willing to do with less, and they're trying to dump their money into other avenues that they think moves the needle forward. And I think there will be a selected few in the upper echelon of the marketplace that will understand that there's there's also a component of production value and content that comes with a content creator like yourself and myself, who have a particular sort of aesthetic, and production level and quality and tools available, and of course the ease, and the speed of turnaround.
Yeah.
I think as much as everybody really loves to do their own videos, I think by the very nature of how lazy society is, that will keep us employed and keep us busy. But I think in terms of taking it to another level, I think for people like you and I, we to separate ourselves, we have to go above and beyond, and we have to show not only production value but be able uh, to distinguish from the 19-year-old kid who is producing good content but doesn't necessarily do it at scale or at the speed that we do it. Like, they have to be in the mood to edit that one or two travel videos, and that $300 just doesn't spark them to do it for everybody else, because it's not them, it's like they're not into it. And that's where people are going to struggle, that they want that really flashy video and they want to contract this person, and unless that person is really driven to produce and produce on time and on budget and on spec, as advertised, they're going to struggle. They just can't do it. And I know a bunch of people in that space who produce good work,
Yeah.
can't go and edit unless they feel like
Feel
it.
like it. Yeah.
And so, like, what would take us 2 days to produce takes them a month and a half to 2 months to produce the same type of video, because we do it because we have the infrastructure and the gusto to do it, and we don't have to be in the mood. They have to be in the mood. And I think that's where we get to shine.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you mentioned like how guys like us have to raise our game, and it's like that's where the gray hair comes in, buddy. It communicates experience.
So I got to
No,
go to the salt and pepper look.
but we have like so much experience working with businesses, and in working with them, like I don't know, that's what I've always liked about our industry is when you're working with a client, you're really in this sort of incubator of their business, and you learn what makes their business tick a lot of the time, how it operates. So for me, it's really fascinating to say, oh, that's how that business operates. That's how they do their thing, and that's how that industry works. So like how I'm trying to position myself now to distinguish myself from those young people coming up in our industry is like I'm less of a, I think I've used this language with you before though, but I'm less of a dude with a camera now. And I want to position myself more as like a business consultant, a marketing consultant who wants to know first what your business, how your business is operating. where your challenges in that business are. And it kind of turns the conversation on its head from what the typical video producer is going to talk about. Like, we're going to make you this cool video. Now, the conversation for me now starts with, well, how's your business doing? Where are your challenges? What problems are you having? And then, okay, well, how can we use video to solve that?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But that's how my conversations start now, and it's partly about repositioning me, like upping my game and offering more than just the pretty pictures.
Mm.
You know, now these pictures have to do, and we've got the tools to demonstrate how they work and how they can drive business. So that's that's where you and I can offer way more than the dudes with cameras coming up.
And so for people who are like in business, small business, and solopreneurs who are bootstrapping, what is your take on their entry and foray into something like YouTube, and into video? Do you like
Um,
it? Do you suggest that they do YouTube? Do you feel like they should be empowered to go and do that, or do you think that they should just be hands off and let you do all the work?
I'm not sure if I know what you mean. Like, you mean the client going in and using YouTube? And
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
if we're
yeah,
gonna, if this podcast is to try to provide value for
yeah,
somebody who's considering it, who isn't a videographer, who isn't a photographer,
yeah.
what are your thoughts about them entering YouTube now? I mean, you alluded that YouTube is not at its peak, and I understand why you said, when it was at its peak. I think you meant from a content creator's perspective, but not necessarily from an industry perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, I think I know several business owners that I think they're particularly tuned into their marketing, and they like to dabble on the social media platforms with their marketing. So I guess it's going to be case by case. But for those that have an affinity for it, yeah, they're really powerful tools that allow you to peel back and look behind the campaign at how it's actually performing. So for a business owner that is data driven about their business, the ability to take a look at it's there, it's available. And you ask anyone who's invested their marketing dollars in newspaper advertising or radio advertising or television advertising, and you ask them, how's that going for you? Like, they don't know.
yeah.
I literally have one business owner who told me, well, I run an ad in the paper, and a week later, people show up on the day I told them I was having a sale. And it's busy that day, busier than normal. So it must be working. It's like, well, yeah, that's really antiquated. So yeah, I think business owners who have an affinity for it and want to, I think they should jump on and experiment and learn. And if they can, they can take it to the next level by, working with someone like us who can dig back to that next layer, which is actually designing the campaigns and doing the targeting and, you know, doing the back end work that actually gets those results.
Yeah.
Um,
And so
yeah, no,
let's go into that back end work. So, what do you think, or what have you seen are common mistakes that people try to do on their YouTube channel, that they think is moving the needle, but may not necessarily be doing what they think it does?
humor. Humor is so hard. I think, yeah, I think you have to, when you're creating content and think about the content you're going to create, it's hard, but you've got to really focus on the content, the actual words, the information that you're passing on. Period. Um, yeah, I think you have to focus on the information, make sure it's going to be of value to your customer. They're either going to learn something or they're going to be entertained. Edutainment, right, is the old phrase for it. I think that's what people really need to concentrate on when they're thinking about creating content online? Is it going to educate and entertain in that order? As far as other places, I think people are missing. I mean, I think a lot of people are throwing dollars at boosting posts and stuff like that, which I don't know the effectiveness of that. I think for those campaigns to really be effective, you've got to approach it a little more sophisticated than that. I feel like the boost button on Facebook in particular is kind of like bait.
It is bait. It is
It's like, oh,
absolutely
I got
bait.
200 views, and that excites people and gives them a little shot, and then the hope is that they'll spend more. But some people I know, they throw $5 or $20 and they get one post that gets a bunch. That's not consistently moving any business into your business.
Yeah, and there's so much depth that goes into the strategy, and I think that people don't really understand. But I've had conversations with other people in this space, in this exact space, and the amount of money that you actually have to put in to test, try, and to put it in is astronomical. Actually, it's quite daunting. It's not that $20, $30. I mean, $200 is a real, like drop in the bucket to what you're really going to have to spend in ad spend in order to really um, figure out what's going to work for your particular niche, your particular voice, the people that you target, all the things that you thought would work. Sometimes it's not the real reality of it. And from a marketer's perspective, I don't think anybody really has a secret sauce. They might have ways to segment it, but at the end of the day, all marketers and somebody who tells you that they got the secret sauce is I personally view as lying. So if you got if somebody's watching this and you got a secret sauce and you want to put it in the test, I would pay to watch you be able to replicate it over and over again, because the real trial and error is you don't know what the market wants until you put it out there, and then you start to curate it.
You curate it, you test it, you tweak it, you iterate it slowly, and that's what people that work with us need to understand. It's like you're going to have to endure a couple months where all we're doing is just sitting and watching and changing one little thing at a time.
Mm-hmm. And it's sequential, and that's the thing is you can't change the whole gamut, because then you introduce a whole new set of variables, and you don't know which variable worked and which one didn't.
That's right.
And
So if
yeah.
you only change one at a time, you'll be able to get, oh yeah, we changed that headline, or we changed that image, we changed that one thing, and oh, we got a bump. We got a bump in the numbers. We got more conversions, or we got more click-throughs, or whatever metric you're looking at. And that for advertisers is kind of a painful thing to come to grips with. It's like, it's going to cost me thousands of dollars just to test this mofo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there is no secret sauce.
No.
You've gotta spend a lot of time on discovery and learning about your client's business. We do our clients' businesses, so that we can craft a message and a campaign that is strategic and has a really clear goal in mind. But whatever creative we come up with and whatever audience we deliver that message to, there's no guarantee it's going to work. And you will have to test, and you will have to change, and you will have to prepare for that to take sometimes months.
Yeah.
But when you do get it right and your return on investment starts to increase, then the magic can happen. And the opportunity is still there, I think, for businesses in all segments, in all industries, to do this, to do it right. And then when it's dialed in, smoke the competition.
Yeah, and I think you're really right on that track. I think a lot of people don't really understand that we, as digital marketers, and content creators, are really still in infancy of web marketing and advertising. I know at one point it was really easy when it was really brand new, and people like Gary Vaynerchuk made their life on it, buying keywords for pennies on the dollar. But I think from an advertising perspective, I think the frustration from a consumer standpoint is that they feel like they're wasting so much money in order to figure out what that looks like. And, they read about these people who have, huge uptick and surge in their business with these secret sauce things, but they forget that, there were the 20 years to the overnight success.
Yeah.
And that still took trial and error. And yes, those ads work, but those ads work because that guy was tweaking it, for the many years beforehand, and it finally hit. And
Yeah.
yes, it could be successful now, but it doesn't mean that it's successful forever. And that's a really big part of what advertising is. And I think that's the frustration that we get to face when people are looking at putting money into production and advertising. Is they all talk about ROI and what are they going to get in the short term, but it isn't always about the short term now, is it?
No, not for a real success. And so that goes back to you when you as a business owner hear someone offering you the secret sauce solution. Um, it's yeah. It,
It's don't
it's
spend the $27 to go buy the fucking book.
yeah, those ones that make you kind of go, really? That sounds a little too good to be true. Yeah, it is too good to be true. And the other thing that, like, look, I've run into a few digital marketers over the years that I know they are in it because they see the ability to create recurring revenue for themselves because they can put someone on a retainer. You can't sleep at the wheel on these things. You can't just turn a campaign on and go golfing down, or wherever, or you've got to, if you're running 5 campaigns for 5 clients, yeah, sure, you're creating great recurring revenue for your business as long as you're getting them results, but you're still getting them results because you're monitoring those campaigns and you're working on those campaigns. It's not just turn it on and let the algorithm go to work and start, printing money for your business.
Yeah, and
Digital marketers have to stay engaged and on top of it and working with their clients, and it's got to be a close relationship.
yeah, and Seth Godin mentions that in his book Purple Cow. It's we in marketing, in order to stand out, especially in such a noisy marketplace online, digitally, there's just so much stuff being thrown at us. You get those, what they call the purple cow, that the unique special something that gets put in front of you. And if you stare at that purple cow, or for a long enough time, it becomes not interesting anymore. And that just alludes to what it is that you were talking about. Is you could set up an ad and you can have a great ad and it could run for a little while, and you could maybe sit on it for a little bit, but it ultimately starts to decline. And I mean, the effectiveness of that ad, and things have to change because people get immune or callous to what everybody else is doing.
Callous is the emotion. I think a lot of people feel. I heard an analogy the other day from a filmmaker that I know who said he saw an ad for the Red Cross during a webcast. He was watching a TV show streaming, and that Red Cross ad came up, and he admired the cinematography and the production values and all the things they did to make that ad, and said, "Wow, that was a great ad." And the second and third time he saw it during that 40-minute broadcast, he thought the same thing. But the fifth and sixth and seventh and eighth time he saw it, he started disliking it and having a negative feeling towards the Red Cross for not showing him something different. And so, yeah, you when you build these campaigns, you can reach a lot of people with a lot of messaging, but if you're showing them the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not taking them on a journey, really. You have to take them on a journey of getting to know you and your service and your business and your product. And that's more than just the first thing they see. What we try to design is a customer journey that, through a process of 3 or 4 different pieces of content, unique content, delivered at different periods in their journey, they get to know, like, and trust you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get to know that you're an authority. They get to build some affinity, get to like you. Um, you take them on that process with the content. So that's what we try to do in all the work we're doing right now. And yeah, take people on that journey.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And then, and it's funny because when we're taking a person on that journey, you know, I liken it to, remember when you're young? I don't know if I'm dating myself, but you know those choose your own story books where, like, you open it up and you decide to take this part, and so you have to flip to another page to start
They're
off.
in my they're in my shopping cart on Amazon right now. You can buy a set of 6, the originals, for like $38. Like the original artwork and everything, paperback, same as you used to get in your elementary school library.
And that's the thing, and that's what it is. And I think
It is.
everybody,
You're right.
and everybody's so lazy now in the marketplace where they're just trying to put out blanket ads because they want to cover everybody, and their whole goal is that if enough people see what I have, that, like, there are people willing to buy. And it's really not the truth. It's
You
you know
have to make people. The analogy I use is your marketing has to make people uh, self-identify. You have to hit them with a message that is, yeah, it's not going to hit everybody in the marketplace. It's going to hit that one person who's going to put their hand up and go, geez, that's my problem. That I need that solution, right? It's like being in a crowded room, like a stadium, and there's a medical emergency and someone needs a doctor, and you yell out, is there a doctor in the house? Like, that's what your advertising needs to do, is yell out for that particular person, so that when they hear that message, go, yes, I'm a doctor. That's what the analogy I think about when I'm creating, campaigns and videos for people. Is like, is this going to make someone go, I need that? Because that's what works on me. And that's, I've been caught in a couple sales funnels online where it's like, damn, that was really good. Like, that language spoke right to me. Right. And that's eliminating a lot of people in your potential audience, but it's narrowing down on people that are ready to buy.
it just
That
reduces the friction.
reduces the friction. And instead of trying to sell to 20 people or 20 million people, you try and concentrate your message. Maybe you're delivering the message to a big audience, but the message is designed so that those particular people within the audience are going to go, yeah, that's me, I need that. And they'll click on your ad or your video, and they've entered into your sales funnel, and you're off to the races.
Yep. And that's it's a really big part. So one of the things I'd like to ask my guests is, what is one of your favorite resources, either related to your profession, or something that you just find value in, whether it's a book, a podcast, maybe it's my podcast. But what is it that you like to refer
Sure.
to add value into your life?
Sure. Okay. TV and movies. I've always used those for inspiration and ideas, whether it's the advertising on TV or the programming I'm watching. That's always informed my ideas to help in the productions I'm working on. Sometimes it's like the way a graphic is displayed on screen. You know, I'll go and watch commercials for a while. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll design it that way. So just what's on TV has always been useful to me. There's a podcast on is it NPR, the national? It's down in the States. Anyway, they've got a podcast on NPR called How I Built This.
Oh, yes, yes.
That's my favorite podcast, hand down, because they interview business owners of, like, household name brands and businesses, and they talk to them about their journey from inception to where they are now. and to hear those stories and how many times they failed along the way, or how many times they thought it was all over and there's never going to work, and they got and to hear how they came out of it just through persistence, and mostly persistence, just not quitting, is really inspirational and amazing. So I highly recommend that one.
Now I know we're entering the a long part of our meeting, so I'm gonna have to cut this one short
Fine.
today. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. I hope people who are listening to this find value to it. If you did, please make sure you subscribe, like and follow. You can find Justin, Justin Booth, um, at www.visualmedia.com, and if you have questions about video production, feel free to reach out to him. He's a good friend of mine, and as you can see, we have good banter and we have good discussions. And even though we're both in the same industry, I think it's like everything else. We both serve our markets, and we both have great value to provide to clients.
I've always enjoyed like our industry because you can collaborate with your competitors in an instant. So I've always enjoyed collaborating and talking to you.
Absolutely. We'll probably pick up another one later on. I think if this one does well and people have questions, it'd be worth our while to hop on another one and maybe dive down a specific avenue of stuff.
Anytime.
Thank you.